You don't have to agree with me, but I have to feel fully heard. You may not agree with me, but you're going to have to suspend judgment and get beyond the judgment. If you care about us, then whatever the issue is has to become secondary, and we have to become primary. And our relationship is what's got to matter more than the issue.
Welcome to the Happiness Squad podcast. On today's episode, I sit down with the extraordinary Dr. Carole Robin, award-winning teacher of interpersonal dynamics, also lovingly called touchy-feely, co-author of Connect, Building Exceptional Relationships, and one of the world's leading experts in helping leaders build trust, communicate effectively, and lead with heart. We unpack in today's episode what makes a relationship exceptional, not just functional, why emotions at work are not a liability, but a leadership superpower, and how to repair trust when it breaks. Carole walked us through game-changing practices from the "if you really knew me" check-in to the 15% rule and the 3 realities model of feedback that can transform how teams connect, collaborate, and flourish. Whether you're leading a company or just trying to show up more fully in your own life, Carole's insights are a powerful reminder that exceptional relationships aren't reserved for the lucky. They are built one small courageous act at a time. Carole, I am so excited to have you on our podcast today. Thank you for spending time with us.
Well, likewise, I am thrilled to be here with you. And as I was mentioning before we got started, it's very clear you've done your homework, and it's always a pleasure to work with somebody who has.
Well, of course, I'm a huge fan, as you know. I want to just start, that you cover a topic, as we were discussing, that is so relevant today. It was relevant when the book got published. Obviously, it's been a core part of your work, a big chunk of your life's work. But I think this is more relevant today than ever. And the book is on the topic of relationships, and really not just building relationships, but exceptional relationships with family, friends, and colleagues. So bring that to life a little bit, Carole. Why you feel, especially at work and in our life today, relationships are the key to flourishing.
Well, there's a reason that the course on which the book is based is taught at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. It's not hidden away somewhere in a psych department. And that's because the fundamental premise is that people do business with people. Not, yes, ideas matter and money matters and strategy matters. They all matter. But in the end, we do business with people. So unless we get the people part right, we're going to be somewhat limited in how successful we're going to be. Plus, 50 years of this course being taught at Stanford, and by the way, I didn't invent it. A lot of people think I invented it because I became known as the queen of touchy-feely, but I didn't invent it. I'm not that old. I'm old, but I'm not that old. But what became obvious in all the reports from all the alums over the decades is that being interpersonally competent, having the skills to develop relationships that are robust and functional and exceptional, is actually a determinant of professional success and personal success, by the way, because I get as many calls and emails and visits from former students and now participants from Leaders in Tech, which I co-founded, I just became a CEO, I owe it all to you. I raised my 3rd round, I owe it all to you. We'd expect that. But I'm pretty sure your class and now your book just saved my marriage. And those are the ones that make me feel even more thrilled that we took the time and the energy to put this out into the world, so that you don't have to go to the Graduate School of Business at Stanford University to learn all this stuff.
Yeah, no, I love that. In fact, as I was sharing, I think I plan to use this book over the next 12 weeks with our own team. We've got about 7 people now. And let's see, every week, read a chapter or 2, do the exercises, and really use that to build a more connected team. So,
yeah, I hope you'll keep me posted on how that went.
Absolutely. So tell me, you already shared this powerful story, right, of what you've been hearing feedback on from people who've done it, both in the personal and professional life. Can you share a story of a leader, who truly, they saw a massive transformation in their team
Yeah.
when they started focusing on relationships?
Yeah. This is the one that comes to mind for me most immediately, and there's a little recency effect here, is so after I left Stanford, I started Leaders in Tech. I co-founded Leaders in Tech, which basically brings the whole Carole Robin touchy-feely curriculum to Silicon Valley tech leaders, now beyond Silicon Valley. But I had a CEO founder from my program, from Leaders in Tech, who wrote to me not that long ago, maybe a year ago. He'd gone through our program. And he said, Carole, I just had to share this with you. So one of the things that he had learned in the program was an activity called If You Really Knew Me, which is basically we start our groups that way. And so he decided to start his staff meetings with his direct reports that way, with 10 minutes, with each person taking 90 seconds or 2 minutes to say, if you really knew me right now, you would know. And then he had shared the vocabulary of feelings, which is core to that's called touchy-feely for a reason. We can get back to all that. But they had to include feeling words. And he said, and he had started this team up, or restarted this team up during the pandemic, and they remained remote. And so they had never met in person. And he called me to say that one of his direct reports, a gentleman, had just called him and said, you know what? I have never felt this connected to all the people that I work with, and I've never even met them in person.
Wow.
So that would be an example of the way this can translate into action and then into results.
And so he starts his every meeting every week with that question. If you really knew me right now, you would know.
You would know. And
by
a
the 90-second share.
At Leaders in Tech, we start every one of our meetings that way when we're having a staff meeting. And it's not a super long thing. There are 6 of us. We each take a minute and a half, maybe 2. We time it. And if you really knew me right now, you would know that I'm thrilled to be on this podcast. Very few things are more important to me than to share this work and let people know that these resources exist. If you really knew me, you'd know that I believe I was put on this planet to help people learn how to connect. If you really knew me, you'd know that I don't think that's ever been more important than right now. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
And of course, once you get to know each other, then it's like, if you really knew me right now, and then it's an opportunity to tell people what's going on for you right now in the moment.
Well, I'll match that, Carole, back to you. If you really knew me right now, you would know that how excited I am about this conversation with you. Our framework, Pearl, relationships, is one of the fourth element in our Pearl model. And I'm so excited because relationships are at the heart of flourishing. And relationships right now are under so much pressure.
Yeah.
Relationships between colleagues, relationships between colleagues and bosses, relationships between employees and company, relationships between employees and customers and suppliers, given all the tariff thing that's happening, right?
Oh, yes.
How much do I push back? How much do I pass forward?
Yes.
And relationships between, people and their families and loved ones. When you carry all that stress,
of the political divide. Absolutely.
Or different sides of the political divides in community. And I'm holding all of that. And I am so excited about this conversation.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, thank you.
I love that you call out not just build relationships, but exceptional relationships.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about what defines an exceptional relationship rather than just getting along.
So it's useful to think about relationships as existing on a continuum. And at one end of the continuum is contact and no connection. Those are your thousands of Facebook friends. At the other end of the continuum is what David and my co-author and I came to call exceptional. And it's what we saw over and over again happen and get created in this course that we taught, Interpersonal Dynamics. aka touchy-feely. And as we started to analyze what is it that happens as a relationship moves along this continuum, by the way, it turns out that along the way you get to robust and functional. So even that is better than contact and no connection.
Yep.
And in fact, it takes a lot of work and effort to get to exceptional. And we're not suggesting the goal should be to turn every one of your relationships into something exceptional. That's A, impractical, and B, unnecessary. But it turns out that once you know the skills and competencies to get there, you know how to get to at least robust and functional.
Yes.
And so a relationship that's moved along the continuum and gotten at least there has a number of characteristics. The first three have to do with being more known to each other. I allow myself to be known by you. You allow yourself to be known by me. And we trust each other. We trust that our disclosures won't be used against us. And there are some skills that are attached to that. And the second three characteristics have to do with basically honesty and productive conflict. We are honest with each other. We keep it real, so to speak. We deal with conflict productively. And I'm going to underscore deal with rather than run away from. And we're invested in each other's growth. And when you have all of those characteristics, you've moved along the continuum to at least robust and functional. And to the extent that you have a lot of depth to each of those, you've gone into exceptional territory. But you've at least gotten some of the way there.
You've gotten the way there. And I love it, right? So, in our work, we talk a lot about really knowing the full iceberg of the person rather than just making sense of them on their behaviors. We don't even inquire into the thoughts that inform the behavior. Forget about the fears, the needs, that are belief systems that are driving them.
The stories that we make up, the mental models we have. Absolutely.
Right. So I love that notion of, really looking at the depth. And then the second piece is, this is the other part about exceptional that I loved what you're just highlighting, is it's not just about getting along and not actually having conflicts, but it's about having them the right way. We use the word constructive conflicts. How do we actually have, conflicts on topic, not people. But so it's so cool around these two elements. And hence it makes sense that you can't invest the time to really know everyone.
Right.
And so you have to make choices, right?
Exactly.
But the skills should help you, as you highlight, in getting to even robust functional relationships with those you work with. You should at least have those, right? You should at least have those. So look, as you said, you didn't invent touchy-feely, but you are the queen of touchy-feely. And touchy-feely is legendary. So for those who haven't experienced it, give a little bit of details around that course, why it's so transformative. Share a bit on that.
So the course is actually called Interpersonal Dynamics. Nope, very few people remember that's what the course is called because the students call it touchy-feely. Touchy-feely, emphasis on the feeling, not the touchy. And I say that because it turns out that feelings and emotions are a core element and of building relationships, sharing those, understanding them in yourself, becoming aware of them in yourself, and then, allowing someone else to know that that's how you're feeling. Those are all really, really important elements of this moving down this continuum. The pedagogy of the course, the way the learning happens in the course is through something called T groups. The T does not stand for therapy. It stands for training. And they were invented a long time ago. I want to say 70 years ago or something at a place called NTL Labs. They're very difficult to explain to somebody who's never been in one. It's like trying to explain skiing to someone who's never seen snow. Very hard to understand what a T group is. It's a learning laboratory, essentially. And the idea is that you bring 12 students together in this learning laboratory, and their only goal, and they each have learning goals, and their learning goals are different from each other because maybe I'm learning how to leave a little more space for other people to speak up because it's very easy for me to speak up. Maybe you're learning how to get in there a little sooner with your ideas and your thoughts and not hold back so long. So how great that we find ourselves in the same interdependent learning situation.
Totally.
Because I can't work on my learning goal unless you work on yours. So the learning happens in these learning laboratories. And what ultimately is learned, yes, people learn how to give feedback in ways that are much more likely to be effective and productive. Yes, people learn how to have more productive conflict. Yes, people learn how to manage the dynamics of disclosure. They learn a lot about feelings. But what they ultimately learn is they learn how to learn about others. And one of the most fundamental lessons is what it takes for me to connect with you and for you to trust me and for you to be influenced by me may be different than what is going to take the person sitting right next to you.
Yep.
Because, it's not a one size fits all. And so what they learn is they learn what builds trust, what creates mistrust, what builds influence, what creates care, and what does care look like? And it looks very different for you than it looks for somebody else. And that's what's so powerful for them. In the meantime, I like to say every interaction with another human being is an opportunity to learn about yourself. It's an opportunity to learn about them. And it's an opportunity to learn about interpersonal dynamics. So imagine a quarter-long class where that is all that is happening. Interactions with 12 other human beings. You're learning a lot about yourself, about them, and about interpersonal dynamics.
Yeah. And what I love about that, Carol, is you're not just learning in the traditional sense, right?
Right.
Somebody's talking at you, you're reading a book, you're listening to a podcast. You're learning through practice.
Exactly. In fact, T groups are the purest form of experiential learning.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I also love this notion of everybody is practicing their own. How different than one size fits all trainings that are part and parcel of learning and development in organizations,
Absolutely.
right? 90%,
Absolutely.
it's the same content in the same way, and everybody needs to have this.
Yes. Yes. Well, that's limited, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
With regard
So I
to
love that. I think it's almost an invitation to be able to use this because it is also a meaningful time investment. It's a
it is.
quarter. So how can you find the people who can benefit the most with this, put them together? Now, look, everybody can, but I think there will always be some who can potentially benefit more than the others, or they are prioritizing this learning for them
That's
as
right.
the foundation for success.
That's right, Ashish. And in fact, that's what we found with Leaders in Tech, which is a program that people applied for. CEO founders apply for. And now, they don't have to be CEO founders. We've got some offerings for executives and management that's below the CEO founder level. But yes, there's a self-selection to people who want to invest in themselves in service of being better leaders, being more effective leaders, and building better, more higher performing organizations.
Amazing. So you talk about these three realities: intent, behavior, and impact. Talk to me a little bit about why this is so powerful for feedback and growth.
Well, let's back up for a moment. The three realities are in any interaction between two people, there are three realities. There's what's going on for me.
Yep.
I know all that. There's whatever I do. So what's going on for me is reality number one. Whatever I do is reality number two. Whatever impact that has on you is reality number three.
Yep.
At any point in time, each of us only has access to two of those realities. I know what's going on for me and what I've done. You know what I've done and how it impacted you. Two out of the three. Until we start more deliberately and intentionally sharing. You share what the impact was on you, and I share what the intent was behind my saying or doing something. So most people, and we talk about a metaphorical net as a net existing between between my behavior and the impact it had on you. So I know that I'm speaking right now, that I'm trying to be clear, that I'm hoping to be inspirational, that I'm or at least generate a little bit of interest. I know what I'm saying. We both know that, but I have no idea whether or not I'm being effective. And I have no idea whether or not you're feeling more drawn or less drawn to the material, more likely to go look at the book or less likely to go look at the book, more likely to invest your time, less likely. So I don't know any of that until you tell me.
Yep.
Now, when it comes to feedback, because when we give feedback poorly, that's when we create defensiveness. But if we use the model of the three realities and the net, when we give feedback and we stay on our side of the net, we are less likely to create defensiveness. So, for example, instead of saying, this is an example, I think is an example I use in the book many, many, many years ago, because my husband is not this person anymore. But many, many years ago, he would come home, he would collapse on the chair and he'd pick up a newspaper and he'd start reading. And I'd been home with two little kids and I'd be desperate for adult interaction. And I would come running in and saying, "Oh my God, you're home. You won't believe what happened today." And what he would do is he'd pick up the newspaper and say, So I would say, "You're not listening." And then he would say, "Yeah, I am. You're all worked up because you went to that new nursery." And I'd say, "How can you be so insensitive? How can you not care?" All of those are examples of being over the net. You're not
Yep.
listening. I'm not in his head. I don't know whether or not he's listening or not. How can you not care unless he says, "Frankly, I don't care"? I don't know whether he cares or not. I'm making an attribution or I'm imputing a motive. How can you be so insensitive? I'm labeling. None of those things are feedback done well. I think I'm giving him feedback. But if I learn to stay on my side of the net and say, "Honey, when I speak to you and I get no response except a grunt," that's reality number 2. Anybody watching a video would say that's what happened. Carole spoke, Andy grunted. And when you do respond, the only thing you do is make no eye contact, and there's an affectless regurgitation of what I just said. Also, what happened in reality number 2. And when you do that, I don't feel heard. I don't feel heard. I'm entirely on my side of the net. You can't say, "Yeah, you do." And that's
Because you're not saying you're not hearing me. You're saying I
exactly.
don't
I
feel
don't
heard.
feel heard. Exactly. So
Yeah.
the minute I own my reaction to his behavior, I'm less likely to create defensiveness. And then I get to say, and I'm telling you this because this is an important element of a feedback exchange. Why am I telling you this? My intent in telling you this is that when I don't feel heard, I feel distanced. And when I feel distanced, I feel sad. And I also can't be here for you in the way that I want to be. Now, isn't that better than "You're not listening to me"?
Absolutely. You know, Carol, I'm smiling because we have a model we use. I picked up at McKinsey in my, this is something we were taught very early when you joined as associates. And I now use that with my clients to, in teams where you've so beautifully in human language articulated the model. So the model literally is called the OILS model. O stands for observation, which is
Uh-huh.
objective, not subjective.
Right. That's the
I
data. That's the
it's your
behavior.
it's your number 2 reality. This is what I observed. Anybody should be able to observe that. If it is not something that can be observed, then that's my kind of interpretation, right?
Exactly.
It's not objective. I stands for impact. And this is the invitation to stay on your side of the neck. The impact on me is this, right? You show up late. The impact on me is I feel that, it throws off the meeting.
But you see, wait, I'm going to stop you. I feel that it throws up off the meeting is not a feeling.
I can say I feel I get thrown off in the
Exactly.
meeting.
Or I feel worried, or I feel thrown off, or I
Yeah,
feel distracted, or
I love that.
that's why it's called touchy-feely, because feelings are such an important part of that.
Yeah,
And when you say "I feel that" or "I feel like," first of all, it's grammatically impossible to express a feeling after that word. I feel that angry. I feel that disappointed. I feel like sad. You can't in English.
I
And
feel
I feel
emotion.
insert feeling word. And there's a discipline to that, but it has a very different impact.
Mm. So that's beautiful, right? So that's your reality number, the first reality of
That's
like
mine. Right.
my reality. And then we always insert a pause. And
Yeah.
that's what the L stands for, which is to listen to the third person, ask them the question of what's going on.
I love that because part of our model is don't forget inquiry when you're giving somebody feedback, which is it's easy to just think, there, you did all this stuff. I've got all these opinions. I got all these feelings about it. But, you might want to ask, what's going on for you?
Exactly. I had this play out with a client of mine who had this story about this person always showing up late,
Yes.
and quote unquote, always being late. All he had was one meeting every week that this person showed up late. So he didn't know that he is always late.
Right.
You are always late. Like, based on what? Like 1
Right.
hour a week? But he also had the story that because you didn't respect me or you didn't think what
Right.
I'm
You
doing
didn't
matters.
care. Right.
And that pause and asking the other person what's going on, opened up the real problem. The
Bingo.
real problem was this was an in-person meeting. Just before this was another meeting with somebody else this person reported to that was in another building. It was physically impossible for him
Yes.
to show up to
Yes.
this meeting when there's 15 minutes separating the two places,
Yes. Yes.
right? God
It's a,
forbid if
it's a
that meeting ran
wonderful
over.
example.
And so then the last part is S, which is solutioning. Now that we know the real situation, now we can develop a solution together. I can push my meeting back. I can make it. You can join in virtually. I
Right.
can reach out to that other person and say, can you move your meeting? I can
Right.
move it to a different day. Versus me just giving you feedback saying you don't care and I don't think this is going to go good
Perfect.
for you.
Perfect. Because we would say the objective of giving somebody constructive feedback is to move into problem solving, not to
Yeah.
change them, not to make them wrong or bad, not to make them feel bad, but to move into problem solving.
We hope you're enjoying this episode and would love your help in spreading awareness and furthering our mission to help 1 billion people rewire for happiness. Please consider leaving us a review and sharing this podcast with others in your personal and professional life who you feel could benefit from some of these very insights. It's a really simple way to extend and spread positivity. Also, check out Rewire, our proprietary offering to move you from knowing to doing, on the Happiness Squad website, www.happiness.squad.com. Rewire uses the science of habit formation and the power of community to help you build happier habits in 5 minutes or less daily. Now, back to the episode. I love that. 3 realities, 1, 2, 3 is so clearly articulated. What's going on with you? What are you observing? How am I behaving?
What are the
Or
behaviors?
how the other person is behaving, right? So how am I behaving? What am I noticing? And then the third is
What's
the
going
impact.
on for them?
What's going on for them? Thank you. Very,
Sure.
very cool. I want to shift to another part of the book around which really this idea in connect. By the way, here's the book. I really encourage leaders to get this copy and read it with your teams. Do the exercise, take the quarter. It'll have such an impact. So the idea I want to pick up on, Carole, is this 15% rule that you talk about. So tell us about that and how that works and why it's such a game changer.
It's very popular. So when we talk about allowing ourselves to become more known, which of course involves disclosure and vulnerability, or we talk about giving somebody feedback and letting them know that especially constructive feedback, something they're doing is not working for us. That feels risky. And so the level of risk can vary, but it feels risky at some level most of the time. And so the question becomes, well, how do you decide? How do you decide how much risk to take and who to take it with? So we all have a comfort zone. Think about 3 concentric circles, a comfort zone where you don't think twice about what you say. And then the outermost circle is the danger zone where you can't imagine ever saying this to this person. But there's this circle in the middle, which is really important, which is what we call the zone of learning. So it's somewhere inside the danger zone, because if you're too freaked out, you're not going to learn anything. But it's outside the comfort zone because you don't learn anything new unless you actually step outside the comfort zone. But when we first came up with those 3 circles, the students used to say, but Carole, how do I know that the minute I step outside my comfort zone, I'm not in my danger zone? How do I know I've stayed in my learning zone? So we came up with the idea of 15%. Step a little bit outside your comfort zone. You'll know it. You'll feel it in your body. If nothing else, you'll feel a little uncomfortable, but you won't feel freaked out. And if I step 15% outside my comfort zone with you and then see what happens, And then maybe you step 15% outside your comfort zone with me, and that goes well. We've redrawn the comfort zone between the two of us to being a little bit bigger. And then we can go 15% beyond that. And that's how we learn and grow and deepen relationships. We don't go from 0 to 100 in 2.3 seconds.
Yeah. It is such a beautiful application, right, of this comfort zone and the terror zone and this thing in the middle where growth happens.
Exactly.
Right? There's this beautiful quote I'm reminded of as I hear you, which is, if you want to discover new lands, you can't discover that if you never want to lose sight
yes.
of land.
Nice.
Right? You have to be comfortable losing sight.
Exactly.
For you to see something else, even if it's just crossing Lake Michigan, right?
Right. A little bit. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Sight for a little bit, for a little while, not for weeks.
But I also like the two builds there of what you just said. Number one, how do I know? Where you'll feel it.
Yes.
Right? And we know what terror feels like. I know what terror feels like when I was about to jump off the bungee. My first bungee thing, that was the only one that I ever did. I never did it again. But also, right, so we know, we feel it somatically. We feel it in our body. So just do enough that you are a little uncomfortable, but not freaking out.
Exactly.
And then I also love this idea that for those that you want to build exceptional relationships or even get to robust, it behooves you to, through continuous experimentation and practice, grow that zone.
Exactly.
Because otherwise we're not growing, we're stagnant.
Exactly. Bingo. And by the way, just because we are in a good place right now doesn't mean we're exactly the same person a year from now.
Yeah.
So maybe we got to a place where we were in a really great relationship, and then one of us has changed a little bit. Unless we continue working at it, we're not static. Human beings are not static. We're works in progress. Every one of us is a work in progress.
So, Carole, I get it. And I'm sure people get it. Tell me about some of the challenges you hear from as people try and put this into practice. Or help us basically, I'm asking, get our listeners to go from I know it to actually doing it.
Yes.
Is there another ingredient there?
Well, it's a great question because it's not easy. It requires discipline and commitment. It's not going to just, and every single time you try it, it's not going to work perfectly. Sometimes human beings are unpredictable. But, if you go into it with a spirit of adventure and experimentation, it's endlessly fascinating.
Yeah.
And, I think it is work, but sometimes it sounds like a lot more work than it really is. I mean, it's not that much work, especially if you want to start small. If you want to pick one, and that's one of the things that the book encourages people to do, is pick one relationship or two relationships in your life that you would like to deepen. And then try this stuff. Try a little bit more disclosure, 15% outside your comfort zone with that person. Try sharing more of your feelings in the moment with that person. Try giving them feedback on what we call pinches, those small things that people do that irritate you, that we say, it's not worth it, I'm not going to say anything. But then they keep doing it, and then it irritates you more and more. And then they become crunches because they started out a pinch and now it's a crunch. So try expressing a pinch as a pinch. This is not a big deal. And if I let it go, I'm afraid it's going to become a big deal.
Yeah.
So there are all these opportunities all the time, but it's a little overwhelming to think of it that way. So if you're just starting to get your feet wet and you want to develop some of these skills, pick one or two people. And by all means, whatever you do not pick the most difficult person in your life and think, well, I've never been able to get to anywhere with this person, I think I'll pick them. No, start with somebody with whom you already have a decent relationship and try some of this stuff and see what happens and learn from the doing. I mean, that's one of the most core concepts of the course.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest challenge we had in writing the book, that you're not going to learn about all this by reading about it unless you go do something with it.
Yeah. And that's what I loved about it, right? As you highlight, Carole, every chapter has an activity.
Yes.
Right? Almost everyone, here, go try this.
Yes.
It has quizzes, deepen your learning, self-reflection. You have an application, making
Yes.
sense of it. And I loved it. I actually just opened the chapter on pinches and crunches.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and the other thing that the book does is it conveys all these different concepts. You learn about them through stories of amalgamations of people
Yep.
that, none of these are real people, but, a father and a daughter, two work colleagues, two guys who are buddies. And then you read the story of how their relationship is unfolding. And one of the things you get to do at the end, the chapter prompts you to say, so what would you do in Mia's situation if Anya had said that to you? So now you're also thinking about, gee, I'm learning something about these characters and how their relationship, how they got into trouble with each other. How would I react if I was
Mm-hmm.
one of them? And what is there for me to learn about myself in noticing that would be my natural reaction?
Totally. Yeah. I go back to a statement you made, right? In any conversation,
Yes.
we are learning about ourselves.
Yes.
We're learning about the other person. And we're learning about the interpersonal dynamics. Or even, I would love to get your perspective to say, we're learning about the space between us that we share.
Yes.
What's
Yes.
in the system,
Yes.
right?
That's all. Yeah.
You also talk about, as you said, touchy-feely is called touchy-feely. Connect is about feelings, right? The focus is on feelings and emotions. And you talk about own your emotions or they will own you.
Yeah.
I give a different analogy of a horse and a horse rider who's running. And have you heard this story? It's very,
No.
So, in ancient India on a road, there is this person who's on a horse and he's just tearing down this busy street. And
Uh-huh.
literally people are ducking left and right, right? Because,
Oh, wow.
this thing is just galloping as fast as it can down the road. And as one of the persons jumps to the side, he asks the horse rider, hey, where are you going so fast? And he
Uh-huh.
says, don't ask me, ask the horse.
Yes. Exactly.
Right? Don't ask me. It's not me. And I think that's a little bit of own your emotions or they
I
will
think
own you.
that's a wonderful anecdote. Goes very well with the premise of the point, which is human beings are driven often by feelings.
Yes.
And the more aware we are of what we're feeling, the more choice we have and the more control we have over whether or not we're going to let the feeling be the horse. And furthermore, human beings are very leaky. So we're not very good at hiding what's going on for us.
Yes.
So, but we can be very incongruent if we're not in touch with our emotions, because I might say I'm fine. Well, I'm not fine when I express something like that,
Yep.
that way. But, if I can say I'm just irritated, then I'm congruent. No, everything's fine. I'm good. Then I'm very incongruent. Then that's confusing to people.
Mm-hmm.
So the more in touch with my own feelings that I am, the more congruent I can be. And also the more I can help you understand me. Because if you know that I'm feeling really irritated in the moment, that's useful for you to know that.
Yep.
As opposed to trying to guess and make up what is going on for me. Here's another, my name is Carole, Carole. So this is called a Carolean principle, which is in the absence of data, people make crap up.
Yep.
That's the case for disclosure. The less you tell them, the more they'll fill in the blanks with their own stories. And the more incongruent you are, the more they'll make up stories. Oh, she must be really mad at me. Well, maybe it's got nothing to do with you.
Yes.
So the more in touch I can be with, right now I'm feeling really spun up. I'm really feeling aggravated and irritated. And by the way, it doesn't have anything to do with you. It has to do with that meeting I just walked out of. That's a much more complete communication.
Yeah. Well, I think it just points to the importance, Carol, of we think we're just interacting with our words. But
Yes.
the reality is what we are carrying, the emotions, our body sensations, how we are feeling today, how well we slept, all of that, I think we're really,
Absolutely.
that's the whole person that we're interacting with.
Absolutely.
And yet it's only the tip of the iceberg that's visible to the other person.
Unless we disclose it.
Unless we disclose it. Nobody can get into your head, into your body to know what's going on. And in your past, right? Of
Exactly.
like where you've come from. I think it's such an important model. How do you help teams and individuals, right, who you're kind of taking through this course, really bring these? One, how do you actually educate them that there is more feelings and emotions than, I'm angry and I'm happy, or I'm sad, these simple, like, how do you actually teach them the rich tapestry of emotions? And more importantly, how do you actually get them comfortable to bring them into work? Because often I hear from leaders, oh, I don't want to talk about that.
Right.
Like, I don't
Right.
know what that uncovers, and I'm not equipped to handle that. So
Right.
how do you create knowledge, and how do you teach them to use them?
Well, let's take the first question, which is there's a reason that in the back of the book, there's an appendix called the vocabulary of feelings. There's a reason that when you take the course or you take the Leaders in Tech program, you get a laminated copy of the vocabulary of feelings, because we've been socialized so strongly to leave feelings out of the workplace that frankly, we have a hard time even accessing our feelings
Yep.
sometimes. So we know we're feeling something, but it's like, oh, I don't know what it is. So I used to love it when I taught the course at Stanford, because I could always tell who was taking the course, because they'd walk around with their little vocabulary feelings everywhere they went. Our Leaders in Tech participants, they have a copy of the vocabulary feelings on every conference room table. They have copies of vocabularies of feelings, on their cork tops, above their desks. So for starters, we equip people with a vocabulary, which turns out to be pretty important. And we also, a core module in the training is
Mm-hmm.
an exploration of what gets in our way of expressing feelings, and what are some of the barriers.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, I'm feeling something, but I don't even know what, which is a place to start somatically, and then pay attention instead of dismissing it, pay attention to it, try to figure out. And then there are categories, is it mad? Is it sad? Is it glad? Is it afraid? So there's major categories of feelings. And then within that, there's a lot of nuances, and that's where the vocabulary comes in really handy.
And do you differentiate, Carol, or are you using feelings and emotions synonymously, or are
A
you
great
separating them?
question, because for those of you who are psych majors out there, we use the words interchangeably.
Yep.
And we know they're not, but for our purposes, it's fine to talk about it as emotions or feelings. But, and this is where Inside Out comes in really handy if you saw the
Yep.
movie.
I
Mad,
love
sad,
those.
mad, sad, glad, scared. It's one of those major ones. And then somewhere below that, there's all kinds of, and this is the other reason that we also make a case for why feelings are so important to include in language, in your communication. It's like treble and bass in music, thoughts and feelings. If you use only treble or only bass, the music sounds weird.
Yep.
If you only communicate in thoughts and never express any feelings, it's an incomplete communication. And furthermore, feelings are what give me a sense of how important the issue is. Are you irritated? Are you mad? Are you furious? Are you
Yep.
uneasy or scared or terrified? Those are pretty important for me to really understand what's going on for you, and
Well, I
for
think
you to
it's
understand
important.
me.
Yeah. Well, I think what I'm just reflecting on this, right? So we, in our sunflower model, have a whole module on master your emotions.
Yes.
I don't think, and I only covered the 4 or 6, we talk about the most common ones: angry, resentful, or,
Yes.
we talk about fear, anxiety. We talk about sadness, shame, and guilt. So those are the ones we talk about. But, I am actually,
Happiness and joy. Let's remember those.
well, I think that's what the rest of the petals are about. Right. But this one is specifically around those harder ones that we have a hard time dealing. But I think I'm going to actually, with your permission, invite people to actually look at this vocabulary, which is a
Oh,
holistic
absolutely.
list. I think, and it's important for 2 reasons. I think number one, it's of course important to be able to articulate the feeling to the other person, because I'm just thinking a lonely feeling of left out, which is a mild intensity feeling,
Yes.
versus abandoned.
Yes. Excellent example.
Two very different implications for the other person, right? And for what you're feeling and the extreme, and then the action it
It invites.
engenders.
Exactly.
So I think it's important for that, but I think it's important for yourself because we ourselves, by the way, might have multiple feelings and different
Precisely.
intensities. And so if we want to be really thoughtful and masterful in navigating it, it's important to know what am I feeling.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So no, this is incredibly helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Looking at the time, I want to
Yes.
think a little bit and I want to get to look. I think these are such powerful tools to deepen relationships, but I think they're also powerful tools to repair
Yes.
relationships because there are certain relationships that we have to do it because they're so important, and our life would not matter, would not have as much color, right?
Or meaning.
Or meaning. So I love this notion of kintsugi. We had a course 2 years ago called Kintsugi, believe it or not,
I love
that we
that.
had actually
Uh-huh.
launched. It was more in the context of, people losing jobs where there was this big, massive layoffs happening. And we're
Yes.
like,
Yes.
don't let that destroy you, move forward. But talk about Kintsugi in the context of repairing relationships and more specifically, how do you rebuild trust after
Yeah.
a rupture?
Well, one of the key stories in the book is the story of my co-author and me,
Yeah.
we had an incredible fight. I said I would never speak to him again. For a couple of years, I didn't speak to him. So it wasn't like, for a month. It was a couple of years. And we had been very close and very, very close colleagues. He'd been a mentor to me. And it wasn't until we had a conversation in which I felt, we're back to feelings and emotions, in which I felt emotionally met by him, that the repair could begin.
Mm.
So often what's happened when there's been that big a rupture is one or both parties, he didn't feel met emotionally by me either. And what we mean by meeting somebody emotionally is feeling really heard. You don't have to agree with me, but I have to feel fully heard. And it's also uh, not judging. It's like, you may not agree with me, but you're going to have to suspend judgment and get beyond the judgment. If you care about us, then whatever the issue is has to become secondary, and we have to become primary. And our relationship is what's got to matter more than the issue.
What's so powerful about that is oftentimes the advice people give is the reverse, right?
Say more.
Don't worry about the us, worry about the issue, be hard on the issue. But if you also are feeling, right, like, I mean, here you and I are, and I've seen this play out in meetings all the time, right? R&D, I'm R&D, or let's say I'm operations, manufacturing, and you're
Yes.
marketing.
Yes.
Okay. Over a history, I think you add no value and you just create 7 colors to make my life hard.
Yes.
And you're marketing, you're saying you have no idea what consumers care about. All you want to create is the black Model T.
That's right.
So that's where we are. I have a story about you. You have a story about me. And now we're talking about this particular issue. And I'll say, no. Don't talk about me and you and what's present between us and the stories and the feelings. Let's talk about the issue. And what you're highlighting is, yes, that can be helpful. We should break down the issue and not worry about us if everything is good. But if we are not in terms of our, feelings and emotion state where we want to be, we are resentful, you've got to actually first make sure that you address
You got to fix the
where we are.
relationship.
You got to fix the relationship.
I do. I have 2 things to say to that. The first is that when there is task conflict, which is what you were talking about, often there's a relationship conflict that lies beneath it. And the task conflict becomes the foil for the relationship conflict. And until you get into the relationship conflict resolution, you're going to continue to have task conflicts.
Yep.
That's the first thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say is that if we're invested in the relationship and we start to feel more emotionally met by each other, and more willing to be vulnerable with each other, then we're going to share more with each other. And when we share more with each other, we're going to find that we actually have some things that we absolutely agree on, some things that we have in common, some things we both care about. And we can focus on that as a place to repair before we start figuring out what we do about the issue that resulted in the riff in the first place.
Yeah. No,
So,
I love that. I love
yeah,
that, right? So you have to be foundationally stable from which
exactly.
to address what's here,
Exactly.
and vulnerability and really focusing on that. Carole, this was so incredibly helpful. Oh my God. I mean, I can't wait for people to read this. I can't wait to read this with my own team. I think it's going to make us so much closer, better relationships, deepen our relationships so we can collectively help, other organizations and teams flourish.
Yeah.
I think it's so powerful. So look,
Well,
any
I hope,
parting thoughts?
yeah. Well, first of all, I hope millions of people listen to your podcast. And, parting words, go do something with what you just heard. Anything, one small thing. Pick a person in your life, and if you feel a little uncertain and a little insecure, rewatch the podcast or go to the
Yep.
website connectandrelate.com. There's articles, there's other podcasts. You can do all kinds of, if you don't want to read the book or get it, and then go do something, because that's the only way you actually learn how to be more interpersonally effective.
Yeah, I love that. Go from knowing to doing and just pick one thing. Pick one thing from all the different pieces. We talked about golden repair, fix the relationship. We talked about the 15%. We talked about becoming, just if nothing else, just learn. And every time you feel an emotion or feeling, go figure out what it is and how many all different places they are. Carole, you talked to us a bit around, this notion of the three realities. Be more curious about the next time you give feedback from which three realities are you talking about. By the way, you always only have access to two. So yeah, just pick one. Pick the one that you want.
Go experiment with becoming more known by somebody, because
Yeah.
something interesting will happen. If you're willing to be open and become more known, 9 times out of 10, they'll reciprocate and be more willing and to be open to being known.
I think that's my commitment to you. I think from next week when we have our weekly meetings, I think we're going to go around and we're going to do, if you really knew me right now. And
Great.
that's going to be a practice that we
Great. And
with.
my recommendation, my add to that is make sure there are 3 feeling words in the check-in.
Yeah, we'll give that. We'll have everybody buy the book and have that and highlight the 3 feeling words as a precursor to that.
Great. I feel very heard and very seen.
Carole, thank you for the amazing work you're doing in helping us become a more connected world that through each other, we create a more positive impact in the world. Thank you. I'm blessed to have you.
Thank you so much for the time and for the opportunity.
That wraps up another episode of the Happiness Squad podcast. We hope you found the insights actionable to enhance your journey towards happiness and fill your life with more joy, health, love, and meaning. Please consider leaving us a review and share the podcast with anyone in your professional or personal life who you feel will benefit from some of these very insights. It's a really simple way to extend support and spread positivity. Take care, and remember, happiness is a choice that's available to you moment to moment in the here and now. Take care and see you next week.